Hello, so this is how I've incorporated Unity with MySQL databases using PHP and a local web host. So first things first, I made a basic UI. It's just a panel for the background, a username to display the username, two input fields, and two buttons. So that's all I've used for this UI. It's very simple to create. You can just use it all going through UI and then it's all there. So the C# script I use, because I'm using a few things that aren't automatically loaded, I'm using Unity Engine UI for the buttons, using TM Pro for the username display in the input fields, and I'm using the networking class as I'm using UnityWebRequest. So first things first, I got all of the references to the UI in the outliner or hierarchy, and then I needed to create the methods for the buttons, what I wanted them to do on their on-click events. So the first one was I wanted to register an account, and the second one was I wanted to log in. So I needed to make these methods, and I needed to make them IE enumerated so the entire program wouldn't freeze while waiting for the web request. So I got a string URL to where the folders are. So as I said, because I'm using a local host, this is where I'm going to get my folders from. You can't see any here, but if we go to my www directory, you can see SQL. I've got a folder called SQL here, and then I've got a PHP folder called register.php. Just to further prove this is what's happening, if I type in SQL after this, you'll see the exact same thing as the file explorer. There's a login PHP and a register.php. The only reason I have an index on this page is just so if I ever did host this, you wouldn't just see all the files that I have like in a table format. So that's where the URL is, and that's how I'm getting to it. So now we need a form. This form is going to be sent to the PHP, so then the PHP can use it to interact with the database. So we're going to add a field. So just imagine we're making a form. We're going to add, let's say, a column header called name, and then underneath it we're going to give the actual name, so the input field from the text we typed in. And then same with password, we're going to have a column for password, then underneath it we're going to have the password text we typed in. Then using the UnityWebRequest class, which is here if you want to look at all the methods it can do. So sorry, this was when I was looking into the download handler. This is the UnityWebRequest class. This is all the things you can do with this class. I only really used the post, which is here somewhere, I think. Yeah, that post. And then I used download handler to retrieve the stuff from the PHP. So now we've sent the URL to the PHP file and we've sent the form. So now we wait for the form to return back to Unity. So let's have a quick look at what the actual form, well, the PHP is. So the PHP is getting a connection to the database. So mine's a local host, because this is where the file's saved on the local host, well, in the directory at least. And then if we go back to PHP my admin and go to user accounts, you can see that I have usernames root by default, password they have none, and privileges they have all. So this is where to go. This is the username. This is the password, as I'm using root and no password. It's just root and then an empty string. And then the database you want to go to, which is in this case UniTutorial. Now all this does is if you cannot connect, echo connection failed. So I can see this in the debug.log. So if I failed to register, failed to connect, it would relay this back here in C#, and then you'll exit the PHP so no more gets executed. So now it's a good time to mention what echo actually does. So echo will return the string wherever I have www.downloadhandler.text. So this text object, if it was to echo here, would be equal to this string. So it would just essentially be doing, so it would essentially just look like this. And then because it's like that, we can tell that's obviously false. That's not how it should be. Like, that's never going to be registered. So that's how the computer sees it, and then we'll just exit this program. So if connection failed, it will always default to creation failed. So this is how we create variables in PHP. We put a $sign in front of it. As I said, we used post, and this is how you transfer stuff through HTTP. So this is where we use it in the PHP. This is essentially saying get the name field from the form we sent. So remember, let's say this was 123. It would say post name, and then it would put past this variable the actual value, which would be 123. So that's what it does for name and password. And then we use a name check query, which is select username from players where username is equal to the username we got from Unity. So if I load up my database, select username from the table players where username equals the one in Unity. So that's just basically making sure you can get the username. So name check is just a query. You give it the connection of the database, and then you give it the query you want to run. So this query has not been called yet, it's just been stored in variables. So this is where we call the query. MySQLite numRows name check, so it's calling this query now. This query is now being run. And this is essentially just making sure that if there's a row in the table that has this name, which would make it greater than 1, that means the username's already taken, and you should not be able to insert another one of the same name into the table. So this is where we insert into the table. So we've checked the username isn't already taken, because if it is, we'll echo this back to Unity. So it would be username taken equal to 0, which is false, so account creation failed. And then we insert, so we insert, if we go back to PHP my admin, insert into, remember, table players, we want the username and the password, and we want to give it the values we got from Unity, which are these variables. So we've just saved this query into a variable at the moment, and then we're going to run this query here. It would probably be good to have an or die function here, just so if it fails to insert for any reason, it'll return that to Unity, so Unity won't return a 0 and say successful. But this works for now, so I'm not going to. This part was very, not tedious to begin with, but very hard to understand which goes where. So the simplest way for me to remember is it's just symmetrical, it's symmetry. So it's single, double, single, and then on the way back it'll be single, double, single. But yeah, that's just personally how I find easiest to remember it. So if it runs through all this without getting any fails, without echoing anything about failure, it'll just echo a 0. So if all this runs as intended, this is exactly what the if statement will look like. And we know that to be true, so we'll say user registered, because this entire script has worked. So if we go to Unity and press play, and we can just type in hello, I don't have a tab between, password and register, because it returned a 0 to that if statement, it'll say user registered. And then if we go to here, you'll see hello and password. Now this isn't good, you should never save passwords in plain text. So there is a thing called salting and hashing, which you can do in the PHP in order to actually encrypt this. Furthermore, for the password input field, you could actually just stop SQL injections per se. Well, not entirely, but to help with that kind of stuff and to stop it so anyone can see you inserting your password if they're around. You can change the content type to password, and then anything you type in this box will be asterisked out, although you can still see it in the text field of the component. And let's just say we register that to the database. Because it hasn't been hashed or anything, it'll still just be returning the plain text. I can't remember the name I used, what was it? Oh, a bunch of 1, 2, 3s. So would it be the one up top? Not too sure what happened there, but that's how it would work. So logging in. If we want to log in, it's essentially the same. We'll change the URL to the login PHP. We want to use the same form because we're going to test the name from the database and the name from Unity to make sure they match. And the name from, well, the password from Unity and the password from the database to see if they match. And we're going to post this information to the PHP. It's exactly the same. And then here, it's exactly the same apart from these extra 3 lines where it just changes the UI to make it look more like you've actually done something instead of it just staying the same and allowing you to log in or register multiple times. So you'll notice if we go to the login script, same connection because it's to the same database, same error, same variables, pretty much the exact same query apart from now you want the password as well instead of just the username. And then you want to get these from the query, so you can do MySQL fetch associates, which is you get the name check query, so it runs this query and it gets the username and the password. So existent info is like an array for username and password, and then existing password can equal this array, and then you give it the field which you want. So in this case it would be password, and then you can check, so this is the one from the database, this password is, and this password's one from Unity, so you can do a quick check. If password from Unity does not equal the password from the database, the passwords do not match. So you don't need this part. I use this part for debugging. This just shows you in the debug.log console that what the passwords are. So it might return this is the Unity password and this is the one from the table. This was because I was having a lot of trouble running this if command to begin with because I wasn't calling this correctly. So if all the script runs correctly, echo is 0. So if all the script runs without any fail, this will be equal to 0. So 0 equals 0 is true, and then it'll run this. So if we go back to Unity, and then we call this BNM and BNM, we can register. So if we go back to our database, BNM, BNM, and then if we press, before we go to the login, as you can see, Unity does not need to compile this code at all. So we don't need to keep starting and stopping game states. We can just carry on because all of this is run server side, is my understanding, and it has nothing to do with Unity. The only thing Unity does is connect with the URL. So if we go on login now, see everything changed, user logged in because the password's matched. Now if we retry and try BNM and then MNB and press login, you can see passwords do not match, which is what the echoes are, and then it will show the password we got from Unity, so that's what we typed in, and then this is the one from the database. This would not be good to do in like an actual live version, like if this was to be hosted for people to actually use, but that's mainly because of more it's plain text and you're outputting it back in plain text to the user. Password should always be encrypted in at some level. The more encryption the better, the most part. So that's how I've used databases with Unity in order to save play data. I'm currently working on projects that take this to a higher level, so I'm using encryption with hashes and salts, and I'm saving more than just usernames and passwords, like player levels. I'm not sure if this is another good way to use it, but like what's saved in your inventory, so when you go back to the game you have everything the exact same. I'm not sure if you could do that through just normal scripts using like a JSON file or something. I'm using it to get the enemy stats. I'm not sure if it's better to keep that in just like regular Unity file and just stuff like that. I'm trying to see what's worth saving on the database side of things over Unity. So thank you for watching, and that's my tutorial.